Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namo Amidabits, Namam Daps, Namam Daps, Namam Daps. Good morning, and thank you for joining me on this Sunday. And I hope that you are holding up well and you are not too stressed out these days as the state begins to slowly open up and things, slowly begin to resemble normal again. The last time I had the chance to talk to you guys, I talked about Ryogemon, and I talked about this idea of gift giving and how we always want to try and repay debts and gifts to people. And I talked about this idea that the Buddha, of course, gives the greatest gift of all, right? The birth in the Pure Land through the primal vow and through his benevolence. And all you have to do is say the Buddha's name in order to achieve this, right? Well, I wanted to kind of follow this up by talking about a gift that's recently made its way into my home. And this is the gift. This is one of those what's in the bag moments that Sensei Lin is so famous for. It's an elephant. My wife adores this elephant. It's actually a bank, right? It's got a slot on the top of its head, but it's an elephant. And this is a gift from a very close friend of my wife, and she wrote this. Elephants are revered as a symbol of good luck, prosperity, strength, power, wisdom, vitality, and they are also the removers of obstacles. May you have each one of these blessings. Right? And then she signed it and then gave us this card, which of course has hippos on it, which doesn't quite fit the theme, but the sentiment was thoughtful nonetheless. And my wife really loves this, right? And I really love this too because I'll level with you. I love elephants. Elephants are one of my favorite animals. I think they're one of the top 10 animals all time. Now, the reason that I love elephants is because they're very much like humans. There's a wealth of evidence that suggests that elephants have a very wide, very complex range of emotions. They've been shown to play. They've been shown to have real familial bonds. So for example, one thing that elephants do that few other animals do is that they actually mourn their dead in a significant, very measurable kind of way. There's lots of evidence that suggests that they will actually stay with the bodies of the elephants that have passed away for long periods of time. It takes them a long mourning period to kind of emotionally overcome this loss. And I think this is fascinating because that's just so fundamentally human of them. The reaction that they have there is something that I think that each and every one of us can understand, right? And really, really empathize with. The other reason that I really like elephants is because on an anecdotal level, they never forget, which I can identify with because I I dwell on everything all the time, and I find it incredibly difficult to let go of my problems, and I imagine that so do elephants. So as a result of that, that's another reason that I empathize with them and love them so much. And while I jest on this point, it's kind of an important point as well that I'll come back to. You see, elephants are interesting. My wife's friend sent us that note and of course talked about some of the symbolic meanings of elephants. But of course in the Buddhist tradition, they hold a lot of symbolic meaning as well. There's a lot of stories that surround elephants in Buddhist tradition that I wanted to focus on today. The first one is one that you, I'm sure, have heard before, and that is that an elephant kind of served as the warning for Queen Maya that she was going to be having a child. The story goes that, of course, right before she gave birth to the historical Buddha, she had a dream, and that dream had an elephant in it, and that elephant was both white and it had 6 tusks, which is, of course, not a standard thing. And when she had this dream, she realized that she was going to be having a child soon. And of course, in Lumbini's garden, shortly thereafter, she had Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Who, of course, becomes the historical Buddha. So the elephant is kind of like a forebear of the birth of the Buddha. And so in a lot of ways, the Buddha is symbolic of the birth of the Buddha. However, there's another story that I kind of want to focus on that I think is a little more pertinent to our understanding of elephants here. And it's a weirder story. The story goes something like this. Back in the day, when the Buddha was beginning to gain a lot of notoriety for all of his teachings, he became something of a celebrity. People began to know about him across the entire continent. They began to pursue him to hear his teachings. Of course, it was understood that he was a wise and deeply compassionate individual. And as a result of this, everybody knew who he was. And while this was an incredible, this is an incredible boost to the overall teachings of his beliefs, some people became very jealous of him. One person, individual, an actual family member of his, became extraordinarily jealous, and this individual was his brother-in-law named Devadatta. Now, Devadatta was very envious of the Buddha's fame and decided that he needed to do something in order to knock him down a peg. In other words, he wanted to discredit the Buddha and make sure that he was going to be on his same level. So what Devadatta does is he actually puts together a plan to get back at the Buddha. And by all measures, it's not a great plan, both in its execution and also in its intended effect. The plan is something like this. He decides that he's going to get an elephant. Logical so far. And then he's going to take the elephant to a palace party, questionable, and then he's going to get the elephant drunk, also questionable. The next step of the plan involves actually getting the elephant in a drunken frenzy and unleashing it at the party so that it begins to stampede, cause lots of chaos, destroy a bunch of stuff, and basically upset everyone there. And it's this point in time that Devadatta decides that he's going to use this opportunity to tell everybody that the Buddha's teachings are the cause of this, and that because the Buddha is causing such a ruckus in the countryside and disrupting the social order, that things like this have started to happen. It's a bad plan. It's objectively a pretty bad plan. Nonetheless, Devadatta decides to do this, okay? So he actually liquors up the elephant, takes it to the palace, unleashes it, and it does exactly as he thinks it's going to do. It stampedes around, causes a bunch of chaos, people are getting scared and running around, and they're terrified of everything. And it's actually and he's prepared to give his actual speech about how the Buddha is the cause, the source of all these problems, all this upheaval. And then an interesting thing happens. The Buddha actually appears, right? He shows up with his followers at the palace, and he walks over and he sees the stampeding elephant. And where everyone else is running from the stampeding elephant, the Buddha actually walks up to the elephant. And he touches the elephant on the head with a lotus flower. And in this moment, the stampeding elephant is pacified. It is calm. It drops all of the anger, it drops all of the drunken stupor, and it just sits peacefully and it bows to the Buddha. And the situation is resolved. From there on, Devadatta is, of course, foiled and kind of regarded as a jerk at that point in time, and people realize what he was trying to do. Again, it wasn't a great plan to begin with, but nonetheless, the Buddha is able to pacify the elephant, the raging, stampeding, drunk elephant, by putting a lotus flower on his head and touching him. It's a weird story, and not a story that we should probably think about literally. But from a symbolic standpoint, I think there's a lot we can take away from it. As I said before, one of the reasons that I love elephants, they never forget. And as I think about this, I too dwell on things, often too much. I mean, the other day, I literally woke up kind of late at night, like I was falling asleep and I woke up late at night because I thought of the perfect thing to say to a coworker who I had kind of like a standoffish conversation with the week prior, and it was too late to say that, and it probably would have just been a terrible decision to like bring up the situation again. But again, just the fact that like I woke up late at night and couldn't stop dwelling on that kind of like reminded me of this fact, right? Like I hold on to things too much, and I'm sure that many of you guys also do this, right? Whether it's the conversation you had that you can't drop, whether it's like the anger that you were holding towards something, Whether it's just like the sense of shame that you might feel over not being able to do something the way that you thought that you should have been able to do it. I mean, this is a common thing that we all experience in some way, right? It's hard to drop it. It's hard to forget. It's hard to let it go. And I think that this kind of proves to me that our minds are very much like this drunk elephant from the story. And it's the world around us that sends us into a frenzy sometimes, and this is Devadatta, right? And this could be trolls on the internet. It could be that are trying to get a rise out of us. This could be the political red meat that is designed to send people into a frenzy. It could be the callous remarks of indifferent individuals that we see on a day-to-day basis. It's very easy for us to become drunk on the poisons around us. And, our mind becomes drunk on this. And when this happens, our emotions really start to rage. They get out of control. We fixate on a single moment in time, the mistakes, and we struggle to let it go. And this causes great pain, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us, right? We cannot forget. So it seems, like the elephant. And we carry that baggage forever if we don't put it down, right? We hold those grudges forever. And we spread that chaos, we spread that damage further. And it's not easy for us to just drop it, right? I mean, if you could, you would. We try to, but it's hard. It really isn't easy, but that's why the teachings of the Buddha exist, right? They serve to calm us. They serve to put things in perspective. They serve to give us the clarity we need to put that stuff down. They remind us that it is not the world itself that is evil, but it is only our inability to see what it actually is that causes the suffering. It is only our ego that causes the suffering. It is only our narrow, clouded view that brings us all this pain. And that by trusting the Buddha and the Buddha's teachings, we can end that cycle. And we can work towards living better lives. The Buddha teaches us that, of course, the people we identify out there in the world that make us so upset, that bring us down, that cause us pain, are not acting malevolently because they are bad people. They are acting that way because they're just like us. We are all drunk elephants. We are all drunk elephants. Remember that. Going back to that message that my wife's friend sent her earlier, elephants are revered as symbols of good luck, prosperity, strength, power, wisdom, vitality. That's all good stuff. Our lives would be better if we lived that way, if we could live that way. But it's the last thing that she says that really stood out to me the most. They are also the removers of obstacles. The removers of obstacles. Well, in Jodo Shinshu, it's important to remember that sometimes the obstacles themselves are us. It's an important thing to remember. And it's the teachings of the Buddha that will allow us to see this. And it's the benevolence of the Buddha that allows us to do something about this. Thank you for listening. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu.